There was a time when every major movie had an accompanying game. Some of them were really good, like Tron, GoldenEye 007, and Alien Isolation. But many movie-based video games are bad, like very bad, like dump it in the hole in the ground bad. Before we begin, let us pay homage to the dumpster fire that was the Atari ET game. Created in just 6 weeks and cited as one of the worst of all time, no other game has inspired mass burials like ET. Take a look at our 10 worst games based on movies. The Back to the Future movies were amazing. Didn't you just love the part when Marty runs around the streets of Hill Valley collecting clocks while dodging hula hoop girls and bees?
It's gotta be a dream.
No, this is not a bootleg. This is the actual, official Back to the Future game. No! Thank you, LJN. There is no real sign of a plot whatsoever. The sprite that should be Marty looks nothing like him and, frankly, could be anyone. The only thing the game and movie have in common is the title.
I barely have a reason to care, and even I notice.
To make matters worse, Should Be Marty dies after a single hit from absolutely anything, meaning that a glancing blow from a deadly hula hoop will set you right back to the beginning. From the levels that both look like the beginning and the ending, to the soundtrack that endlessly loops, it all feels like we're stuck in an awful time machine. How meta.
Hey, Doc, we better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Aliens Colonial Marines almost doesn't make it on this list, as we know a lot of people enjoyed playing the game. But there was just one too many flaws. The graphics weren't great, and the story was quite loose with the canon of the Alien franchise. But what made this game really stand out, and not in a good way, was the bad enemy AI. Not only did they seem completely oblivious to what was happening around them, it was also common for them to freeze in midair or stop moving all of the sudden.
Hi.
Okay, so now
Thanks,
what?
Dad.
You kinda lose the fear factor when your terrifying prey passed out from twerking on the ceiling. Okay, maybe it's unfair to put a game on this list when the source material isn't great to begin with. The Crow, City of Angels, was disliked by critics, audiences, and gamers alike. There are no objectives, tasks, or missions to complete. You just walk around and punch bad guys in the head. Which wouldn't be so bad if the controls were good or the game was fun. But in The Crow, you'll spend most of your time facing the wrong direction and punching at air, while your opponents kick you from behind. The collision detection is a mess too. Swinging body parts often pass right through people. The bad graphics and the constantly repeated lines of the bad guys don't make it much better. City of Angels is just further proof that Hollywood and the games industry has problems with sequels. Rambo, the video game, was a rail shooter and would have made a decent arcade game, but it was released for PC and consoles instead. And playing a light gun game without a gun controller is kinda like finding an Oreo without cream in it. You're missing out on the best part. So what we're left with is a game not good for either platform it was released for. On consoles, controllers made for slow and awkward aiming, and on PC it was way too easy. Closing pop-ups on an illegal streaming site requires more dexterity than this. Combine outdated graphics, dialogue made up of low-quality audio snippets taken from the movies, and an overuse of QuickTime events. It's no surprise that the game was on numerous Worst Game of the Year lists.
It's over, Johnny. It's over! Nothing is over! Nothing! You just don't turn it off!
Total Recall was awesome. And before they ruined it with the 2012 remake, they ruined it with the 1990 NES game. In the first level, you can do anything from fighting miniature hobos that drag you into alleyways, jump on platforms that go nowhere, or fight near a wall that was probably once a glory hole. The first boss is impossibly hard to defeat, as you first have to kill your fake wife quickly before Richter shows up. Because when he does, he fires an endless stream of bullets, leaving you stuck in the crouched position forever. But if you do manage to beat the first boss and this X-ray level, the game grants you this very awkward driving sequence. Good luck trying to beat this game without banging your head into the system.
Consider that a divorce.
Shrek is love, Shrek is life. But maybe don't love Shrek Games, which range from barely passable to playing awful. There are no less than 4 racing games which are all poorly executed Mario Kart rip-offs with bad graphics. You also had Shrek Super Party, which was a copy of Pac-Man FIFA and Mario Party. And in case regular Shrek wasn't good enough for you, you also had Shrek Extra Large, the game with the camera and frame rate that will make you turn just as green as him in a matter of seconds. Maybe Shrek games are just like onions and they have layers. You just have to get into the middle part. To whoever makes the next Shrek game, please remember, check yourself before you Shrek yourself. Before DC tried to copy the Marvel's MCU, they ruined Superman with Superman 64. Apparently the game's release was pushed back a year to fix bugs and flaws, which is generally a wise decision, except when the finished product still has an astounding number of flaws, bugs, and oversights. Some of these flaws, such as the notorious green fog, was excused by the developers by writing it into the story as something called kryptonite fog. Sure, and the dropping frame rate and sluggish controls are because Superman is drunk? With horrible control, unforgivable frame rates, and more bugs that can be counted, it's no wonder that this game was not well received. It was its own kryptonite, after all.
Welcome to Fight Club.
First rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club, the game. But if you could talk about it, we'd start with them not getting the rights to use the imagery of Brad Pitt, Edward Norton, or Jared Leto. So instead they used lookalikes. They even added some random minor characters like Fred Durst. Apparently, the second rule of Fight Club is to do it all for the nookie. They probably ran out of money halfway through the development because only the opening and ending of the game have decent cutscenes, while the rest of the game only has terrible character art slideshows.
He doesn't know. He has no idea. You really have no idea, do you?
No, he doesn't. You don't, do you?
But worst of all is how the developers completely missed the point of the story of Fight Club, including, spoiler alert, missing the massive plot twist of Edward Norton's character being Tyler all along. I guess it's hard to make a game when no one on the team is allowed to talk about it. Friday the 13th is another gem from the great legacy of LJN. And with great gem, we mean one of your worst nightmares. And frankly, it's not scary for being a horror game, but it's scary to think people spent money on this game. The game was like a precursor to Dark Souls, but it felt overly difficult by mistake. This pixel-perfect fight to beat Jason was assuredly inspiration for the team at From Software. Again, LJN blesses us with an infinitely repeating soundtrack that just makes your mind go numb. At least this means you can't think of how infuriatingly bad and difficult this game is.
It's all right now, fellas. It's all over. Everything's
Street Fighter, the movie. No, not the movie. The game about the movie about the game. Are you still following? For some reason in 1995, they decided to make a movie about the Street Fighter franchise. Then made a game based on the movie based on the games. Mind blown. The movie might have been bad, but they made good fighting games in the past, so you would expect at least something decent from them. But no. Instead of going with a good working street fighting engine, they decided to use unproven new technology and tried to digitize the actors of the movie. Which, of course, failed. Not only did it look bad, it played even worse than it looked, if that's possible. So, did we miss a game, or is one of these games actually your guilty pleasure? Let us know in the comments.